Thank you, Heather. That's a very nice, warm welcome. I think you must have talked to my mother to give that introduction, so thank you for that. We really want to take the next few minutes to talk to you about the Cancer AI Alliance, or CAIA, as we refer to it. And I want to just level set a bit in terms of what CAIA is and what its mission is, and then Brian and I will have a bit of a conversation. So CAIA, at its outset, in terms of the mission, is really aimed at creating the world's largest laboratory, AI laboratory, around cancer treatment and cancer research. And we're using federated learning to really be able to aggregate data across the Alliance without compromising either patient data, privacy, or security. And those are the kind of the guiding principles around what CAIA is all about. We've been very fortunate to have funding partners from the 7 technology companies that you can see up on the screen. You don't normally see all of these players kind of playing together at the same time, and we like to say that treating cancer and researching cancer outcomes is nonpartisan, and each of these partners has been incredible at being able to work together collaboratively for the greater good. We also like to talk about the fact that we are at the center of and the epicenter between medicine and science and data and technology and really just trying to, again, create a purposeful mission for what we're all about. Yesterday there was a discussion around, is AI only about efficiency? And we really are the antithesis of that. We are really about growth and the growth mission and the growth initiative around the use of AI. So we've spent a year, the last year, trying to break down a number of orthodoxies and tear down silos that exist inside this ecosystem of that thing we called healthcare and science and cancer research. So with that, Brian, let me turn the conversation to you. What have we accomplished in the last year?
Oh boy. So first of all, thanks, Pete, and thanks to the organizers of the conference. So we, in October of 2024, announced the formation of CAIA, and it was really a cold start at that point. So we were starting from an agreement that we would do something with these technology partners, with these foundational cancer center partners, with a goal of showing that within 1 year we could start to train models in a federated framework across these groups. And actually the first meeting that we had in person for CAIA was in this room, in this very room. And when we got up on the stage and told our cancer center partners that we were going to try and do this within a year, there were chuckles in the audience. It's a speed that cancer centers are not used to operating at. And one of the things we said is to try and suspend disbelief as part of this alliance and try and do things in an ambitious way. And to all of our partners' credits, they really leaned in. And to Pete's point, there are a number of different ways of operating, in particular within cancer centers that are very risk averse. And that's for very good reason. There are things like patient privacy and regulations that are very important to these centers. However, some of the infrastructure that's built up around it ends up getting in the way of progress. And so over the course of the last year, we were able to set up the governance processes, the legal agreements, the technological infrastructure, the common data mapping across these centers, such that we could stand up this federated network of over 1 million patients worth of data across these 4 cancer centers and start to run AI models for 8 very specific research projects across the 4 cancer centers. And so we made that announcement actually to the day 1 year after we announced it. And so we were, as we've said, it's sort of a sprint to the starting line. There's a lot that we still have to do, but we were pretty proud of where we got within a year's time.
Great. So maybe for the audience's purpose, just describe the the federated learning model that we're using at Kaya with the edge nodes and the orchestration layer?
Yeah, absolutely. So federated learning is something that's been around for a while. However, a lot of the advances in cloud computing, GPU resources, et cetera, has made it more tractable in recent years. And so what a federated network does is essentially enables AI models to be orchestrated across a distributed network where, in our case, there are edge nodes within each cancer center where each cancer center's data never leaves their firewall. What happens is an AI model gets sent from this orchestration layer to each cancer center. The model is run locally on data that resides there, and only the model gradients or the summaries of those models get passed back to the orchestration layer. And then that happens iteratively across the network, so from one cancer center to another, where local models get run at each cancer center and update a global model at the orchestration layer. So this allows us to build AI models leveraging the data and the insights at each one of the cancer centers without compromising the individual patient level data that is so important to keep secure and private for all the reasons we talked about earlier.
So Brian, we've talked a little bit about the competing interests in the ecosystem here. How do you balance all of those competing interests on a day-to-day basis and still move Kaya forward?
So really good question. And you touched on it in the sort of for-profit industry partners. It's also true for the cancer centers. All of these cancer centers are actually, we don't think about it this way, but they're competing with one another as well for patients, for research grants, for all sorts of things. But there's sort of a general understanding within these groups that if we really want to make demonstrable progress for the treatment and cures of cancer, we have to be working together. And I've seen this in the pharmaceutical industry. Previously, we had Takeda up on the last panel. A few decades ago, we saw it with genomic research, and each individual pharma company would try and do their internal target discovery and target validation. And what they found out is that it's really hard. And so what we saw, 5-10 years after that was a bunch of pre-competitive networks that sprung up where they were coming in and pooling resources to better understand the underlying biology such that they could compete on developing the drugs. And sort of what we're seeing here is a similar sort of initiative where each one of these cancer centers, they're building their own AI models on their patient data. And what they're finding is that they don't have sufficient numbers of data, depth of data, diversity of data, such that those models can be generalizable and be brought to market. And so there's this common understanding that in order for us to make progress in the way that we all want to see as far as cancer treatment and cures, we're going to have to be working together.
It reminds me of the old proverb, to go fast, go alone. To go far, go together. And that's really what we're seeing in Kaya today. Brian, where do you see Kaya in the next 3 to 5 years?
So that's exactly what we're trying to figure out right now. And from the beginning, with all of our industry partners, we came to those industry partners actually with an order of magnitude larger ask. And what they told us was, first prove you can do it with 4, and then we'll talk about that order of magnitude bump up. And so we've proven in a year that we can do it with 4. What we're going to be focusing on short term is development of those models for the 8 individual use cases that we talked about. But in parallel, what we're working on, and sort of the whole point, Pete talked about developing the world's most comprehensive AI laboratory for cancer research. The only way that it's going to become that is to expand the network. And that's one of the beauties of this federated framework, is that adding individual nodes to the network is, while not trivial, certainly easier to do than it would be to bring in partners in other sorts of frameworks. And so we're going to be looking at expansion across a number of different vectors, both from the perspective of additional cancer center partners, so data contributors, researchers who would be coming onto the platform, but also for additional technology partners and philanthropic partners. So we're excited about where we're headed.
So that's the short story on Kaya. If you want to stay in touch with us or get in touch with us, we got links here to our LinkedIn page as well as our website. For those of you who don't have access to the QR code, canceralliance.ai. Thank you for your time and appreciate it. Heather, we'll send it back to you.